Alrighty, so let me show you how I approached or how I got this code working. And I will tell you, it did take me a few minutes to kind of, and actually probably about 30 minutes of just playing around and having to remember, right, the structure of the async await code. So here's how I'm already set up. I have my live server going. I've got my file. Okay, so the first thing I would do is write my first function, okay, which is just to go out and grab that URL. Okay, so I gave you the URL in the other one. So I'll first start by typing an async keyword in front of my, and I'll call it get photos, right? Which kind of makes sense, right? So in this case, I'm going to set up a data variable inside of here, and I'm going to say await fetch. I'm going to call the fetch API, and I'm just going to grab that from another screen so I have it. So, but you have it on the other assignment. So hopefully you already got this. Oh, let's do this. Okay. Now, hopefully at this point, this code is all kind of making sense, but we have the async keyword in front of the function name declaration. We have data as a local scope variable, but will not be declared and assigned until it comes back from here. But remember, what's the next thing we need to do? We could say photos, right, is actually equal to, helps when you spell constant, right? Okay. So what do we need to do now is that we have to convert it, right? So we have to await to actually convert the data to JSON. Okay. So we know we need to do that. And we could at this point, let's just do this. Okay. Oh, console.log photos. Right? So now what do we need to do? Well, we actually have to call this, right? So what could we do? Could we just call, right? Get photos. Okay, well, let's go look. All right, so we're going to drop into here. Let's see if we're getting anything out. Here's our source. Let's make this a little bigger, right? So we know, oh, sorry, shouldn't have made that as big. Good. So we see down here on the console, we've gotten a lot of images. Okay. That's awesome, right? So that code, just writing the async function, should be relatively straightforward after the last one, but if you didn't get it, that's what you need to do is you make the API call, you wait for it to come back, you declare data, and then you take the data and you JSON it, you convert it into JSON, and in this case, we're just console logging it, but that's only part of the work you needed to do, right? So now let's think about how, because what do we see here that this is an array, okay? So what do we need to do in order to create the page that has the images on it? So we have to do a for loop, and inside that for loop, we create an image tag, and for that image tag, we then point it to either the URL, or as I said in the last one, and I ended up playing with this, is the thumbnail URL because it's just a little smaller. You can use either one. You could also get as to put the title on as well. So, but at minimum, you have to have that part. So what do we need to do now? Okay, so let's go back to our code, right? So we need another function because we don't really want to write our DOM in here, okay? And what we want to be able to do, and there's a couple ways we could do this, but I like the idea of having, and this is something Color Code in his content has really been hammering, and I think it's a principle that we should all be trying to follow, right? Is having very distinct and concise functions. But before we do that, where would we implement in here already a try catch block, right? Right here, we do try, right? Then catch. Now we could actually simulate the idea of a catch, okay? But for now, we would take these two lines, right, up into here. Actually, no, try does not need. That's right. So we say try this, and then on error, right? We could console.log, right? error, and then put in error. Okay. One of the ways you could simulate this error is actually to go offline. I'm not going to do it, but you could simulate that idea. So now, will this change our code? Let's go look, right? Do we still, right? Okay. Ah, we're not getting anything because I took the console log out here, right? Photos. Cool. So we're still getting the photos. We should look at those blocks too. I bet we could actually iterate over. Anyway, I get distracted. Okay. So now what we want to do is have another function that actually renders our, okay. So let's actually think about that. So let's actually write it and then we'll figure out how to integrate it. So this is going to be another, right, async function because it is going to be waiting. It won't run until we come back from getting the photos. So I'm going to call this one rendered photos. Okay. Now what are we going to do in here? Well, we're going to pass in the photos. Okay. Now we don't have it yet. We're just kind of setting it up. Okay. So now we're going to say photos dot for each. I hate it when it does that, but okay. Right now, in this case, right, I could write a regular function or I could just, I don't like the element in this instant because there is something, it's the image itself, or I could call it the reference, right? But reference probably wouldn't be good. I'm going to call it the item in the array. I mean, there's many things I could call it, right? So for each of them, what are we going to do? We're going to set up an image element. Okay. We're going to say document.create element img. Okay. Image is not one of the ones we've done, but it follows the same design pattern we've already seen. And that's why I showed you before. Also now, because remember, what do you need? You need the src. So you go image el dot set attribute. Oh, set attribute. Yep. Okay. And what do we want to set? We want to set the source. Well, what do we want to set it to? And this is where you could just use URL. Okay. Remember here, I was showing you, right? If we look at the first ones, we could either use the URL here or, I'm going to use the thumbnail because it's a little smaller. Now, this is what's important to understand. In order to reference that, right? Remember, when you're iterating over these photos, each of them is referenced by img. So what you will need to do is img, which represents each image, dot, okay? And this is where you could just copy to make sure you get it right. That's what I was trying to do before, right? You can either use URL or thumbnail URL, okay? That just makes your page a little smaller, which is nice. And now, because I'm only doing it once, I'm going to get a little bit lazy by ID, right? Because I already set up inside of my standard output, okay? And then I would just say append child img element. Okay. Now think about where we would put this, right? Now at this point, we could call it, but we have to kind of think about how we're going to set this up. Now, when I did it here, right? Remember what he showed us, right? You want a start, okay? So you want an async start function. Sorry, function start, right? And then we'll go ahead and set up a start, okay? So what do we need to do here, right? So we need to say const photos. In order to do that, what do we need to do? Now, we're not done writing it up in the get photos, but I want you to think about what we would do, right? So in this case, right, why don't we just call it photos equal to await get photos, okay? And now up on here, we could just say return. Actually, we could just do it on this line right here. We could just say return whatever comes back from waiting for it to be converted. And then when it comes back, after we've gotten it back for waiting, then we declare it as photos. Uh-oh. And then what we can do here, and this is the fun part, is, and this is a pattern we didn't necessarily see. Although think about it, what we're going to do now is we're going to call render photos and we're going to pass in photos to it. Okay. So what do you think? Will that work? Yeah, that works. So there's a couple of key pieces here, right? Making sure first you get your get photos done, get your function done, you're getting data out of it, right? You're catching for an error. Again, we could actually, well, I think we could, let's see if we can simulate an error. Oh, it doesn't. Actually, that's not the best one to do. It'd probably be, see, this threw an error up here. So actually what we could do here is we could also do a try catch up there. Oh, not a bad idea. We could see what that would do to our code. Okay. Let's see. We're getting content back. Let me make sure I didn't break something else. Oh, do have to pass photos to it. That would be good. Okay. So we have a try catch block. If you drop internet, I think that should create, I'll do it after I'm done. Right, so you get the error here. You could try to implement a try catch up here as well for actually creating the DOM elements. Right, so when we call get photos, we await what comes back is photos, right? And then we await that to come back to call, which by the way, I realized playing with it, we could actually do this because this is an await. Here, we could actually run this without the await. It runs either way. I just like explicitly saying it because it tells whoever's reading my code, hey, I'm waiting for something to come back here. Okay, hope that helps you. Hope this was an interesting one for you. I definitely like taking things we've just learned and making them a little more real. And this is hopefully a bit more real. Talk to you later. You can go ahead and commit this. This will be all, and then you can move on to this week's app CRUD development.